The gate never fully closed. Torian 4 became a monument world, but not a silent one. It thrummed with activity, culture, conflict, and whispers. Entire pilgrimages were made to stand before the crater, not just to honor Cole Draven, the mechanic who defied the void, but to glimpse the artifact that had rewritten fate. No one dared touch the armor again. Some tried, a brave few. They vanished, gently erased from existence, without violence, without resistance. The Voidskin refused to be worn, except by him. Not because Cole was the chosen one, but because Cole had chosen it first. Not for glory, not for conquest, but because someone had to. The story became scripture. And like all holy things, it grew stranger in the telling. Alien children played games and simulated versions of the battle, casting themselves as the human who wielded impossible light. Poets wrote in dialects that hadn't existed when the battle occurred. Some even started wearing crude replicas of the armor, stylized, ceremonial, purely symbolic. But everyone remembered the truth. It wasn't the armor that saved the galaxy. It was the man inside it, and it was what he believed. 50 years later, a delegation arrived on Earth, not to claim territory or resources or prisoners, but to learn. They walked through ruins and cities, archives and graves, guided by old veterans with rust in their joints and pride in their eyes. What they found shocked them. Humans didn't worship Cole. They remembered him. And more importantly, they acted like he was only the beginning. They don't see him as the pinnacle, said a Zalari ambassador, eyes wide, standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. They see him as the floor, the bare minimum they're expected to live up to. Another delegate nodded slowly. That explains it. Explains what? The ambassador pointed toward the horizon, where a human child launched a solar kite with her grandfather. That, he whispered, the spark. Elsewhere in the galaxy, far from the now revered world of Torian 4, things began to shift. Small worlds, long oppressed under empires born of fear and order, began to ask questions. What had humans done that no one else could? Why had the armor chosen them? Why had the null fled from a single voice, backed by no fleet, no prophecy? Rebellions formed, not with guns, but with ideas. Alien scholars uncovered buried texts, forbidden histories, tales of the Voidskin's creation by precursors long erased by time. The null, they learned, had not been the first to seek control over it, nor the last. The Voidskin was never a weapon. It was a test, a mirror, and only a species stubborn enough to resist its own extinction could survive wearing it. Cole Draven disappeared a decade after the Battle of the Gate. Some say he returned to Earth and died in silence beneath the wreck of his childhood garage. Others believe he walked into the gate one last time and never returned, chasing the null to their end. There are rumors of a human-shaped shadow walking ruined planets, whispering to lost peoples, appearing before the final moments of wars and tilting the scales just enough to save the right ones. No proof, no confirmation, but always, afterward, the same graffiti appeared across walls and ruins and doors of ancient keeps. Don't stop. The phrase took on a life of its own. When the Luminari Rebellion succeeded in toppling their tyrant caste, they carved it into their new capital gates. When the Trinari reformed their education system to include Terran philosophy, they made every child recite it before class. And when the new Galactic Accord was written, an agreement designed to preserve life, not suppress it, the final clause was written in English. If faced with oblivion, we choose resistance. If met with silence, we shout. If offered fear, we laugh. We will not yield. We will not fade. We will not stop. Somewhere, deep beyond charted systems, the null still stirred. They remembered. They remembered the human who spoke to them in ways they didn't understand. Not through weaponry, not through gods, but through audacity. The Voidskin had burned them, not with light, but with conviction, and they had no defense against it. But the galaxy did not fear the null anymore, because the legend of humanity had spread like wildfire, not because of what humans conquered, but because of what they endured. From broken tools, they made vessels. From shattered worlds, they grew gardens. From empty silence, they made music loud enough to shake stars. The monument on Taurian 4 still stands. But now around it, cities have grown. Schools, foundries, libraries, not just human, but everyone, no longer divided, no longer asking who belongs where, but instead, what can we build together now? Tour guides still tell the story. They point to the preserved blast crater, to the dormant gate, to the sealed vault where the void skin floats untouched in zero-G. They speak of Cole Draven, not as a hero, but as a beginning. And when the guide finishes their tale, when a crowd of visitors gasps or applauds or falls into stunned silence, every single one of them turns, in unison, toward the final wall. The one etched with words no empire could erase. Words that became more than a motto. Words that now shape fleets, ignite revolutions, and remind the galaxy what it means to be human. Centuries passed, empires rose and fell, but one phrase remained whispered among the stars. Words spoken in defiance, in hope, in unbreakable will. Human, don't stop. The sky wept flame and stardust. Null ships collapsed inward, like ideas being erased from memory. Their forms twisted in retreat, some shrieking without sound, others simply vanishing as if ashamed to remain in the face of what had awakened. Cole stood at the epicenter of their defeat, or rather, what he had become. The void skin had grown beyond armor. It was no longer a suit, no longer a relic. It was a channel, a cathedral of thought, forged from every fragment of human defiance that responded to his call. It was built from the stubborn grit of generations, from mechanics who fixed the unfixable, soldiers who held the line when logic said run, and colonists who made homes from ash. And Cole was now the voice of that echo. He stood in the crater where the Null had tried to end it all, every inch of the land scorched into obsidian glass. But the gate still stood behind him, unmarred, waiting. Around him, silence. Then, applause. Staggered, hesitant, then rising to a thunder. From a ruined ridge above, the surviving alien delegates watched him approach, dragging his sword of entropy behind him like a titan just woken from myth. They had seen the battle, seen the way the Null recoiled, not just from the weapon, but the will behind it. Ambassador Hozuin of the Trinari stepped forward first. You faced the Enders and stood. I did, Cole said simply. You destroyed what countless species could not. No, he met her gaze. We did. The other species, long fractured by fear, rivalry, and history, had seen what unity under a human banner looked like. Not domination, not submission, but a fierce refusal to die quietly. The silence that followed felt like something changing. The Zalari stepped forward last, his ancient face, unreadable, lowered in what might have been reverence or regret. I have walked among stars before your sun burned. I watched the first empires crumble, thinking no one would ever rise again. But today, his voice faltered. Today I watched a mortal touch the void, and the void blinked. Cole limped closer, blood still drying on his cheek. I'm not a god. I was never meant to wear this. And yet, the Zalari whispered, you were the only one who could. Later, inside the rebuilt command pavilion, Rhys sat beside Cole as med drones tended to his wounds. The void skin had gone dormant, retreating into its neutral state, lightless, quiet. Yet every species present now watched it with awe, whispering stories already taking form. They're calling it a miracle, she said, but I know better. Cole winced, then smirked. Wasn't a miracle. Just a long line of bad ideas that somehow worked out. You really think we're going to hold this together? He glanced toward the open council chamber, where formerly bitter species now leaned over war maps together. If we don't, they'll come back. Rhys nodded slowly, then hesitated. What about you? He looked down at his scarred hands. I was a mechanic, then a soldier, then a myth. I don't know what comes after that. You lead, she said, quiet but certain. Lead what? She smiled. The future. 3 days later, the Zalari held the first official conclave of unity, unprecedented in galactic history. 23 species signed the Articles of Persistence, pledging aid to each other if ever the Null returned. The center of this new coalition, not Zalari Prime, not the Luminari Enclave, Not even Trinari space, but a backwater moon once known only for scrapyards and rust. Taurian 4. The crater where Cole stood against the null was now sealed in a transparent dome, the inside untouched. In the center floated a hologram of the void skin in its awakened form. Around it, statues, verses in every language, and a phrase etched in Terran English. They came for everything. He gave them nothing. Cole watched the dedication from afar. He hadn't worn the armor since the battle. It rested inside the gate's chamber, seemingly inert. But he knew better. It wasn't sleeping. It was watching. Risa joined him on the cliff, handing him a mug of warm algae brew. "You ever going to say something at those ceremonies?" "I said what I needed to up there. People want a leader. They've got plenty. They just want a human to put a face to the fight. Is that so bad?" He didn't answer. She reached into her coat and pulled something small from her pocket, a hexagonal chip with a single red dot pulsing in the center. "What's that?" "A beacon," she said. "Last week, I traced one of the null's retreat paths. It didn't scatter randomly like we thought." He stiffened. "You think they went somewhere?" "I think they went home." Cole stared at the gate. It had been dormant since the end of the battle, waiting. He took the chip and turned it between his fingers. "You still have the key, right?" Risa gave a lopsided smile. "Always." The stars outside seemed quieter now, but no less dangerous. The void skin had revealed something bigger than just a weapon. It had shown the galaxy that humans were more than survivors. They were spark, and sparks, if ignored, become fire. The gate shimmered briefly. Not activation. Anticipation. Somewhere out there, Cole knew the null were licking wounds, remembering his defiance like a scar across the abyss. And maybe, just maybe, he'd have to remind them again. Cole stood before the gate. The massive Zalari construct hovered above Taurian for like a god's eye cracked open, its concentric rings slowly turning, humming with power older than empires. Glyphs glowed across its surface, responding to Cole's armor like a heartbeat syncing with another. And yet, even as peace teetered on the edge of possibility, the atmosphere soured. A ripple trembled through space, not from the gate, from beyond it. "Something's coming," Cole muttered. Risa, standing beside him on a repurposed Luminari command deck, now serving as an improvised council chamber, glanced at the data stream. Her brows furrowed. "No, something's already here." Across the chamber, ambassadors from 7 alien species conferred in hushed urgency. Many still doubted, others feared. None understood the stakes, not fully. Only the Zalari did. And he hadn't spoken since returning from the memory duel with Cole. He merely stood in silence, eyes fixed on the stars outside. The gate opened, but not for them. The first object to emerge wasn't a ship. It was a black cube, rotating with impossible geometry. No emission trails, no matter signatures, just gravity and dread. Behind it, the sky tore. A fleet spilled forth, alien in every sense. Not mechanical, not biological, something other, something that moved like thought wrapped in form. Their ships shifted mid-flight, changing angles and logic like predators made of paradox. Risa gasped. "That's not any known civilization." The Zalari finally spoke, voice like cracked stone. "They are the null. The Enders." Cole's chest tightened. The void skin reacted instantly, folding weapons from the void itself into his arms. "What do they want?" "Nothing," the Zalari said, turning. "Because they believe nothing should exist." The null had no interest in diplomacy. They fired. Across the council deck, explosions flared as shimmering anti-thought beams pierced shielding like wet paper. Dozens of dignitaries died in an instant, their minds unraveled before their bodies hit the ground. Risa screamed. Cole moved, faster than thought. The void skin responded with terrifying grace, forming a dome of liquid black energy around the survivors, absorbing the onslaught. He raised his hand, and a sword shaped like entropy itself sprang forth. Outside, null ships descended in curling spirals of spatial collapse, swallowing chunks of the jungle and sky into oblivion. The gate, once dormant, was screaming. The void skin pulsed with a signal, and the HUD shifted to a strange mode, Apocrypha Protocol, Final Stand. Cole didn't hesitate. He launched. The air cracked as he soared upward, sheathed in flame and gravity distortion. The Null fleet turned toward him, sensing the core anomaly, the human who wore what no Zalari ever could. Cole dove into them. He tore the first apart with a gravity blade, slicing through negative space armor that flickered between states. His movements weren't human anymore. They were memory-guided, battle-engraved. The Voidskin remembered this war. But the Null adapted. One curled tendril lashed through his shields, slicing across his ribs. The pain was raw, real, his blood mixing with the armor's fluid memory. He gritted his teeth. Not today. With a thought, he surged forward, releasing a solar spear into the heart of the mothership. The resulting detonation lit up orbit like a second sun. But it wasn't enough. For every ship he downed, more arrived. The Null weren't a fleet, they were a concept. Every part destroyed returned, altered, crueler. Back on the planet, Risa watched the battle from a fractured viewport, shouting coordinates to allied fleets. They're overwhelming us. Even the Luminari can't hold the upper layers of atmosphere. The Zalari stood still, silent, until Risa grabbed him by the collar and screamed, "Help him!" His ancient eyes met hers. "I can't. We made the Voidskin because we couldn't. He's the final blade. But he's just one person." He looked past her. "No, he's all of them now." Cole plummeted, trailing fire. He slammed into the jungle crater where it all began, his armor failing, systems flickering. He coughed blood, pushed himself to his knees, the Null closing in. They didn't fly. They glided through meaning, a sin against physics, eyes like voids that judged existence as offensive. The largest one approached, humming a sound that made the trees scream. And Cole laughed. Broken, battered, he looked at them and whispered, "You want nothing? You picked the wrong damn species." He activated the Voidskin's core. Unity sync engaged. A pulse shot out across the galaxy. Not a weapon. A call. From mining rigs on the Martian rim, to forgotten colonies deep in the Perseus arm, to sleeper ships adrift between stars. They heard it. Humans. Mechanics, exiles, engineers, pirates. All linked by ancestry and stubborn fire. And in the quiet between heartbeats, they responded. Across the stars, every dormant Voidskin fragment, every relic, every memory shard awoke. Across battlefields and barrooms, humans fell to their knees as images filled their minds, his memories. Cole's will. They didn't question. They rose. Back on Torian 4, Cole stood tall again, renewed. The Voidskin glowed with a new hue, silver, not black. His voice, when it rang out, was more than his own. It was thousands. We are the noise at the end of silence. The fire after the void. The refusal to fade. We are human. And with that, he charged. The Voidskin unfolded its final form. Wings of event horizon. Limbs of plasma logic. Eyes that burned starlight. The Null recoiled. Because for the first time in eternity, they feared. The first shockwave shattered the jungle trees. From the skies above Torian 4, more ships descended. Not sleek Luminari scouts this time, but heavies. Planet breakers. Multi-nation war carriers bearing crests from 3 rival empires. The sky now looked like a battlefield waiting to ignite. Cole stood at the heart of it all, the Voidskin armor adjusting with eerie precision to each unfolding threat. Every time a new ship appeared, the HUD lit with possibilities, countermeasures, trajectory predictions, subspace jump plots. And in the center of his mind, the living intelligence within the armor whispered ancient war math. Calibration complete. Initiate convergence protocol. Phase 1. Whoa, slow down, Cole muttered. I don't want a war. The armor's reply was emotionless. You are the war. From outside the shimmering energy dome, Luminari forces repositioned. They'd stopped firing, but it wasn't mercy, it was calculation. They wanted to capture him alive. Risa, how many ships is that now? Cole asked. Risa, tucked behind a crumbled obsidian pillar, peered at her scanner. 7 different empires. 32 ships. And that's just in the atmosphere. Cole swore. Why does everyone suddenly care? Risa looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Because you're wearing it. The armor wasn't just a relic, Cole. It was a locked throne. And you just sat in it. Before either could say more, a ripple cut through the sky, like reality bending around a pin. A sleek, oval-shaped craft dropped from a crack in space-time. No transponder, no nation markings, just silence. Then a single figure descended. No ship, no armor. Just a tall, obsidian skin being cloaked in shadow and technology so advanced it made the other factions look like children with sticks. The battlefield stilled. The troops, even the Luminari, froze. "Who is that?" Cole asked, breath held. Reese's voice barely registered. That's impossible. They're extinct." The figure stepped forward. A Zalari. Not a ghost, not a memory, a living one. His voice came without sound, echoing directly into Cole's mind and every ship orbiting the planet. The proving has begun. The world shifted. The jungle blurred. The sky vanished. The entire battlefield became a different place, not in body, but in perception. Cole stood alone on a blackened plain. Above him, stars twisted into spirals, and time bled like oil across glass. It wasn't real. It was memory space, a trial encoded into the armor itself. Across from him stood the Zalari, eyes burning like suns contained in glass. "You are the void skin," the alien said. "Do you understand the burden?" Cole squared his stance. "No, but I want to." "Then you must survive me." In a blink, the alien was upon him. No weapon, just a strike of energy that hit like a moon falling. Cole raised his hands. A shimmering shield burst from his forearm, deflecting the blow, but the force sent him skidding backward. "Pain is the teacher of those who would wield destiny," the Zalari growled. "Do not flinch." Cole struck back, sending a pulse wave through the air that shattered the false sky. They clashed, man and myth, across a battlefield that only existed in the folds of thought and legacy. It was more than combat. It was judgment. Memories flowed between them as they fought. Cole saw the Zalari world, vast oceans of crystalline mines, fleets of living metal, and a final stand against entropy. He saw their death, not in fire, but in silence. A war lost to inevitability. And he saw why the Voidskin had been made. Not to wage war, but to end them. It was peace enforced by overwhelming dominance, a fail-safe to silence chaos. The armor wasn't a weapon. It was a veto, and he, a mechanic from a backwater colony, now held that authority. The duel ended with both of them on one knee, breathing heavy, bodies flickering between thought and substance. The Zalari rose first. "You have enough will," he said. "But will alone does not make you worthy." Cole met his eyes. "What is understanding?" He stepped forward and placed a hand on Cole's chest plate. "Let me show you." They returned in a flash. Reality snapped back. The jungle, the dome, the waiting armies. But now Cole saw more. Each ship above him shimmered with intent. The Luminari carried fear disguised as command. The Tormak warlords burned with lust for conquest. The Visari swarms whispered of hunger. Each empire wanted the armor, not to protect the galaxy, to own it. And the armor, his armor, was ready to unleash a storm to keep that from happening. But Cole made a choice. He stood down. The dome collapsed. The soldiers raised weapons. Risa screamed, "What are you doing?" Cole held up both hands and said a single word that echoed through every frequency across every faction's comlink. "Parley." Shock. Then silence. Then, after a long pause, one ship blinked its lights. The old code for response accepted. Another followed. Then another. Across the planet, weapons lowered. Ships paused. A moment of impossible stillness. And above them all, in orbit, the stars shifted again, this time revealing something no one had seen in eons. A gate. A Zalari jump gate the size of a moon, long dormant, now pulsing with the same resonance as Cole's armor. The message was clear. The proving wasn't about war. It was about unlocking the next step. Cole turned to Risa. "We're not just standing at the center of history. We're rewriting it." And from deep space, unseen by all, another presence stirred. One that had waited far longer than the Zalari. and it was not pleased the armor had chosen a human. By the time Cole Arden regained his footing, the armor had quieted, but the world around him had not. The ancient glyphs along the temple walls continued to glow, now cycling through shapes and tones like a language trying to remember itself. It was alien, yes, but not incomprehensible, not anymore. The armor filtered the world in layers. A heads-up display flickered into existence within his vision, translating glyphs, analyzing energy currents, scanning atmospherics. It felt like standing inside a supercomputer with a soul. As if the armor wasn't just a tool, it was a living archive. "Risa," he said again, this time with greater clarity. "You still there?" Her voice came through clearer, though laced with tension. "Yeah, you're scaring the hell out of me, Cole. What's going on down there?" "I think I activated something old." "How old are we talking?" "Before records old." Risa swore in several languages. "Get out of there. Now, before something decides to eat your brain or rewrite your DNA." Cole didn't answer. He couldn't. Something was calling him, no, pulling him. From beneath the temple, a faint vibration now hummed through his boots. The armor's interface flared with a single word in translated script. Hard source. He didn't know what it meant, but it was below. He moved. The temple's undercroft had been sealed until now, but with a thought, he didn't even realize he'd issued the command. The armor interfaced with the ruins. Massive stone slabs slid aside with a groan. A staircase unfolded like stone vines untangling, revealing a descent lit by shifting, bioluminescent veins that pulsed in rhythm with the armor's energy signature. Cole descended alone. Not far above, the dropship began receiving pings, coded signals from ancient relay nodes never meant to be active. Risa sat frozen in her chair as the ship's AI translated fragments. Protector class interface, human accepted. Armor reinitialization successful. Directive Alpha 1 re-engaged. Convergence protocol. She slammed the override button. "Cole, I'm pulling you out. Now." But the signal was fading. The deeper Cole went, the harder it was to reach him. Below, he entered a chamber vast enough to hold the city. It wasn't empty. In the center floated a crystalline sphere the size of a house, suspended by magnetogravity fields that hadn't operated in millennia, but now thrummed to life. From the armor came another translated word. "Core." Cole approached cautiously. The closer he came, the warmer the armor grew, not in heat, but in emotion. A swelling sensation, like standing on the edge of history. As he touched the sphere, a surge of memory, not his, flooded his mind. Galaxies burning, ships falling, a race extinguished, a final decision. The Zalari had built the void skin for one purpose, to house the last will of their people, a living weapon not of destruction, but balance. It would choose its bearer not by bloodline or rank, but by a single metric, will. Cole had it. He didn't know why. Maybe it was all the years of stubborn survival, the jobs that went wrong, and he'd survived anyway. Maybe it was the way he always took a step forward, even when logic screamed to run. Whatever the reason, the void skin had chosen him. The heart source pulsed again, and this time, the armor sang, a chord of tones that harmonized through the temple and rippled through the stone. And the dead world woke up. Miles away, deep beneath crusted mountain ranges, other structures lit up, outposts, data tombs, century posts long buried under sand and silence. Zalari satellites reignited in orbit. An ancient AI hive mind blinked into awareness and sent a ping toward its long-forgotten center. Cole Arden, the one who wore the armor. News spread fast. Within 48 hours, every major galactic power was aware. Ships were rerouted, scanners retuned. Eyes once glazed with ancient disinterest now burned with panic. "No species has ever activated it," growled High Strategos Valor of the Tormac Alliance, his scaled hand clenching the armrest of his war throne. "And now a human does?" "They're primitives," spat Chancellor Alyssa of the Luminari. "They've only been starborn for a few centuries. This must be an error." "It's no error," intoned the whisper voice of the Arucan ambassador, whose species viewed time as memory and rarely spoke aloud. "The signal pattern is clear. The armor chose. The Council of Worlds was summoned to emergency session, and the consensus was unanimous. If the armor was active, and worse, if it bonded with a human, then the balance of power across the galaxy could collapse. Because legends told of what the Voidskin could do. Control systems from light years away. Channel solar energy into weapons. Rewrite gravity wells. Override fleets. Survive black holes. Resurrect data from stars long dead. The armor was never meant to be worn by anyone. And yet now it was. Back on Torian 4, Cole ascended from the chamber with new understanding and an urgent sense of dread. Because the armor had shared a vision of a coming war, a convergence event, one that the Zalari had foreseen but never survived. And now, their final safeguard, him, was in play. Risa met him at the top of the ruins, her eyes wide as she took in his armored form. "What the hell happened to you?" "I saw everything," he whispered. "The fall, the end, and what's coming next." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "Is it bad?" He hesitated. "Worse. Then we need to leave. Now." "I don't think I can." "What do you mean?" He turned to her, eyes glowing faintly beneath the helmet. "The armor's not letting me leave yet. There's more." More came, all right, because above them, the sky burned. 3 ships dropped from warp, sleek, needle-thin cruisers bearing the insignia of the Luminari. Not a greeting party, a retrieval squad. "We're under threat," Risa said instantly, grabbing his arm. "No," Cole said grimly. "I am the threat." The ships landed, armed troops deployed, and the voice in his mind, the armor's presence, offered a single option. "Shield." He raised his hand instinctively. A pulse erupted from the armor, forming a dome of energy around them just as the soldiers opened fire. The ground trembled. The temple screamed. Risa stared at him in disbelief. "What are you now?" Cole's voice echoed with layers of memory and power. "Something new." Outside, the Luminari troops regrouped, preparing to breach. Inside, Cole clenched his fists, his mind locking onto a single message radiating through the void. They were coming for him, for the armor, and they would not stop. Torian 4 was a dead world, not in the way that meant it was uninhabitable. Its twin suns still bathed the land in gold. Its atmosphere remained stable, and native flora clung stubbornly to the rugged cliffs and valleys. No, Torian 4 was dead in the way sacred places sometimes are, hushed by time, haunted by memory, claimed by myth. And at the heart of its silence, buried within the ruins of a shattered dome temple, lay the armor. They call it the Voidskin, crafted by the lost Zalari architects, an extinct race known for impossible technologies. The Voidskin had been unearthed by 1,000 expeditions and rejected by every living species in the galaxy. Not because they were unworthy, but because it rejected them. When touched, it disassembled. When scanned, it remained unreadable. And when forced, it dissolved into vapor and reformed seconds later in its original resting pose. 32 attempts have been made by elites of every known species. Zal warlords, crystal-born Solari, the thought-bonded core. Even the Athari monks, famed for their silence and wisdom, had knelt before the armor in solemn prayer before reaching for it with trembling hands. And every time, it remained untouched, unclaimed, until the human arrived. His name was Cole Arden. He wasn't a scholar or a noble. He didn't carry rank or ancient bloodlines or symbols of divine right. What he did carry was a backpack full of repair tools, a few days of rations, and an uncanny ability to wander into places he wasn't supposed to be. He'd come to Torian not for the armor, but for a cooling module his employer claimed was buried beneath the temple complex. Some rare component from pre-collapse days, valuable enough to justify the contract, dangerous enough to avoid official permits. It was the kind of job that paid well if you lived, and not at all if you didn't. Cole liked those odds. Hold still, he muttered to himself, balancing on a fractured stone beam with a heat scanner in one hand and a rusty crowbar in the other. The floor beneath him was cracked open like a wound, jagged stone swallowing light. His HUD flickered from static to clarity as he rerouted power from his wrist link to amplify the scanner signal. A pulse, just beneath the collapsed altar. Bingo! He leapt down, boots crunching on debris, dust rising in lazy swirls. His breath fogged for a moment as the temperature dropped unnaturally. Goosebumps climbed his arms. Definitely the right spot, he muttered. But as he approached the source of the pulse, the debris shifted, and he saw it. The armor. Tall, humanoid, almost elegant in its design, yet brutal in presence. Blackened like obsidian, but pulsing faintly with blue veins of energy, it stood in a shallow crater where the old altar had cracked. The pieces floated, breastplate, gauntlets, greaves, held together by a hum of invisible force. It looked awake. Cole blinked. Okay, not a cooling module. He took a cautious step forward. Behind him, his comlink chirped. It was Risa, his partner, stationed at the orbiting dropship. Cole, your signal just dipped. You all right down there? Yeah, just found something weird. Weird like what? Weird like Zalari artifact weird. Silence. Then a sigh. That's above our pay grade. No kidding. Cole moved closer, heat scanner forgotten at his side. The air near the armor prickled against his skin, like static before storm. He extended a hand, slow, cautious. He wasn't sure why he was doing it. It felt instinctive. As his fingers neared the chest plate, the air warped slightly like heat haze. Cole! Reese's voice buzzed in his ear. Do not touch it. But it was too late. His palm connected. No pain. No explosion. Just connection. Like a breath drawn after drowning. A surge of something ancient and infinite flooded into him. Not in language, but in impressions. Starlight. War. Silence. Isolation. Hope. The kind of memories that didn't belong to any one person or race, but something far older. And then the armor moved. It folded around him, not aggressively, but with eerie grace. Each piece slid into place, adjusting to his body as though it had always been made for him. The gauntlets clicked into place, the chest plate sealed with a hiss, and the helmet, sleek and narrow-eyed, lowered onto his head. Then came a silence. Every frequency cut off. The world stilled. Inside the armor, Cole stood in a void of stars. A voice, not heard, but felt, rippled through him. Worthy. His knees buckled. Reese's voice screamed over the comms, now crackling with static. Cole, I just saw a surge. Your vitals are Cole. What the hell did you do? He tried to answer, but his own voice boomed with layered echoes. I think it chose me. The temple began to shake. Not violently, but rhythmically, as if responding, as if awakening. Dust poured from above, and symbols etched into the wall began to glow. Ancient glyphs, unreadable by any species, now illuminated by the presence of the one the armor had accepted. Cole staggered to the nearest wall, placing a hand on the glowing script. The moment he did, a pulse shot through the ruins, and across the galaxy, a buried Zalari relay lit up for the first time in 7,000 years. Far from Torian 4, in the high halls of the Intergalactic Council, a seismic alert flared. Void scan activation, the system blinked. Species across dozens of systems paused, stared, and whispered the same question in fear and awe. Who wore it? And the answer echoed, transmitted unknowingly across forgotten relays, through ancient databanks, in a systems long deemed dead. Human. Back on the surface, Cole fell to his knees, panting, vision flickering between reality and something more, something beyond. And deep within the armor, something old stirred. Not a weapon, not a machine, but a promise. And something, far across the stars felt it too. It opened its eyes and smiled.